The cosmology of the world is absolutely fascinating. It's the universe that this writer sets up, and of course the nice thing about being a fantasy or science fiction writer is that you get to create the entire universe. The cosmology is of 7 layers, 7 worlds, which suggests, for example, a lot of Norse mythology. So they live in Midgard. Human beings live in Midgard, in Middle-earth, which is a concept that a lot of people will be familiar with. And it is an old Norse concept that human beings live in the middle keep, in the middle place, and that there's stuff above and below, or outside, or however you want to put it. Above Midgard are the Norse gods and something above them. Below Midgard are the elves, who are elemental creatures, who are lower than the humans, and below them may be the dragons. And there are 3 worlds above each. And watching how these worlds impact each other is full of significance for actually how we think of the place of human beings in our world.
So it sounds like he is trying to define a pretty specific worldview with higher places and lower places. Is that a fair word to use?
Yeah, I mean, he's a Roman Catholic writer, and you see a lot of that. There's a lot of Greek, kind of maybe a Platonic sort of feel to a lot of it. But I'm not sure I'm a fan of the word worldview. And the beauty of what Wolfe has done in these books is that he's set up a cosmology.
So what's the difference?
To me, the word worldview, and you and I run in circles that like to use that word a lot. And
Right.
It's a fine word, as fine as it goes, as far as it goes. But the word worldview suggests an objective viewer, someone who can stand outside the world, look at it, and make decisions about it. A cosmology doesn't have to be physical. It is a map of the universe, but your cosmology is a map of the universe in all its senses, and its intellectual, philosophical, theological spaces, spiritual spaces. Within the universe, your cosmology tells you where you are. There's a little "you are here" star somewhere in your cosmology. With a worldview, you don't have that.
So the cosmology more clearly defines your position in relation to the rest of...
Right, and that's a huge theme in The Wizard Knight.
Okay.
There are the human beings right in the middle. There are 3 worlds above them and 3 worlds below them. And the human beings are the most balanced. And it shows itself in all sorts of ways. So, for example, the further out you get from Midgard, the more the beings from those universes, from those worlds, can, for example, change their shape. So human beings can't really change their shape. Some might have the ability, but the further out you go from there, the more malleable the people are. And the suggestion is that it's not just malleable physically, but malleable in other ways. There's also this idea, the top world, you don't know anything about, but it's the purest world. And so as you fall down from it, almost in a sort of Platonic or Gnostic sort of way, as you fall down from that top world, the purity lessens.
Okay.
And human beings, again, are right in the middle. So obviously you can see the repercussions for what good and evil are within that can be fascinating. And the idea is, for example, the elves are below the human beings. So they're on the less pure side of the middle. But individuals can act for good or evil in any of the worlds. Their natures are good or evil intrinsically to the extent of the world they come from. He uses the codes of Norse mythology and medieval Christianity most.
Okay.
But, really it's all about, for him, a sense of place and what its core being is. And that's what lends it significance. So what I mean by that is that a plant is a plant, and gods are gods, men are men, women are women, cats are cats.
Okay.
And there's a cat in this story, and this cat is a cat to the fullest extent he can be. He's a talking cat, but he's a cat, and he's so cattish that catness means something for the story. And another example of that is the giants. Actually, before I get into that, one of my pet peeves, I have 4 young kids. One of my pet peeves in stories for kids is when a dragon is not a dragon. When the dragon is good. I mean, I'm okay with dragons being good. There's a great example, for example, in
Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
exactly.
Eustace. Okay,
To me, that's a great example of a good way to use the concept of a good dragon.
Okay.
Because he's never really a dragon. The transformation is there, and it's frightening, and he could truly be a dragon forever. And that's what's frightening. He doesn't want to stay a dragon. You know, and people who read that sort of story, I think, can be frightened by they seem to read that what's being said is that those people over there are bad, these people over here are good. If you look like that, you're bad. But when we're talking about this sort of story, a dragon means something in particular.
Okay.
Dragons must be evil. They symbolize evil. Okay. A dove must mean peace or goodness or fragility. That's what they symbolize. And so there's a sense of place for everything. The giants, the Norse had them as the opponents of the gods, and they were cast down in some extent into the world of humans, and that's the same case in this universe of the Wizard Knight. They live. You know, it's named Jotunland, just like it's named in Norse mythology, the land of the giants. It's up in the mountains. So because of the way this universe is set up, it's literally halfway between the land of the humans and the land of the gods. And that ends up having deep significance, that the giants point to what human beings could be if they ever became godlike in their monstrosity. And the giants have things like, I talked a little bit about the fact that the creatures who got out of the middle could change more easily. Some of the giants have 2 heads or 3 arms, which you run across in English fairy tales all the time. And the significance that Wolfe puts on that is, you know, you find out later about this ability that creatures outside of that middle world can have. But what it ends up doing is making them more monstrous, which reflects on how you read about humans. Another bad guy, if you will, in this Middle Earth of the humans is this kingdom of cannibals. They end up fighting a war against the Osterlings, which you could read as the Easterlings. And this is the kind of thing that frightens people, like when the Tolkien movies came out and the Southerlings were there, and people started talking about racism with the Southerlings. And I don't want to get into that argument. There's actually some good meat on that criticism. But what these Osterlings end up symbolizing, because they are ravenous and cannibalistic, they end up being how human beings could be demeaned towards evil. So there's how human beings could be exalted toward evil. They could become like the giants, and there's how they could be how they could be demeaned towards evil. So every nation, every person, every plant, everything tells you something about human beings. So because of this, it's a place.